If he shows up, we'll get him on.
This chair is so low.
He needs a high chair.
I need a high
Just
chair.
like Colorado.
If that works, so that would be better.
Yeah,
High chair.
I thought a lot about how to try to frame this meeting. There's real, the best way is to just be completely transparent. So remember the picture of the Homeland Security car after, back in October, and how that kind of thing went viral? And, you know, there was all the stories about what happened and trying to videotape the guy, and the guy got ugly or whatever. We knew why that guy was here in town. He was here because there was an INS operation, or immigration operation up on the highway. But I spent 6 months dealing with that, you know, and it came from it came from all over the country back at us. And so I wanted the opportunity to get a few of you guys here that I know pay attention to federal issues as much or more than anybody else. But also, I think you have a lot of, you all obviously probably have a lot of the same circles, but you all have sort of unique ways, unique sets of people that you talk to. And I'm actually asking for your help to try to just get the right facts out about what's going to happen. So there's going to be an exercise here. I've printed these out, passed these out. There's about 8 copies. I hope there's enough. If not, we'll make more. But that's one document, and then there's this that's stapled together as one document. And this one right here that's a front and back is the most easy to read. They're both about the same thing. We're going to be part of a. We're going to be part of a.
You need to make more?
Yeah.
Yes? No?
Sorry.
That's right. Our community is going to be part of a national exercise coming up in April. And the FEMA document kind of explains the purpose of the exercise. It's just to test federal preparedness, and recovery efforts and communication among federal agencies. So they got this exercise going on in April, and it's called the Capstone exercise. And they're going to have 5 different events occurring simultaneously in the country, and one of them will be here. And each event in itself is sort of an interesting standalone event that will test systems and test communities about how we react to natural disasters or terrorist events or wildland fires or floods or whatever. And then the reason that they're doing all 5 at the same time is to test the system even greater about how would they manage multiple events all at one time. You'll have to get him out of this door. He went on by.
So what are the 5 communities?
So the hey Jeff, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you, sir?
Good. So there's.
I'll sit over there.
I was just telling everybody, Jeff, that we're part of a national exercise. In April, there's 5 different national exercises going on, and one of them will occur here. Each exercise in itself is a test of emergency management systems and coordination among local and federal and state governmental entities. And then the reason that they're having all 5 at once is to just test the nation's ability to manage multiple incidents at once. There's 2 papers here. One's a FEMA sheet that really does more to explain about why they're doing all 5 at once. And then this sheet is really just to explain mostly our event. So the first one is Alaska Shield, and it will occur up in Alaska, and it's sort of in honor of Alaskan earthquake that occurred a long time ago. But they're going to have a mock exercise of a significant Alaskan earthquake and a tsunami that will affect the greater Pacific Northwest. So it'll hit, and this is all just drill simulation type exercises. That's called Alaska Shield. They have all these funky names for it. Ours is the worst named, I think. I don't know why, but Ardent Sentry 14 is basically a Department of Defense, which is your military assets, and how they would support Alaska Shield, which would be the tsunami event. And then New Wakes 14 is our event. And I'm gonna skip over that, finish talking about the rest, and then I'll go back to New Wakes. And then Eagle Horizon 14 is a federal continuity of operations and reconstitution planning exercise. It's just, you know, they wanna test their ability to continue to provide services, when their resources get taxed, you know, in a big event. And then Silver Phoenix is a laptop exercise focusing on the challenges associated with prioritizing and doing recovery activities involving all these 5 events. So what happens here? Well, the one thing that happens here is unique in that it is sort of another mock drill, and NUWACS or NUWACS is a acronym for Nuclear Weapon Accident Incident Exercise. So in the government, there is, in the Department of Energy, one of their sections is called the Office of Secure Transport. And they have the responsibility of transporting nuclear weapons and nuclear material and components of parts back and forth across the country as needed by the government. I-70 is not one of their primary routes, but it is a secondary route. It's always something that they can fall back to if they need to. They're going to drill here this year, and I have no idea why they picked us, to be honest with you. They just pick places. Every year, every 5 years they do this, and then every time they do this, it's usually a military exercise, but in this event, they get to work with the Department of Energy on this nuclear exercise. The other times they do it, they work with the Army and Department of Defense. So the simulated exercise is going to be a semi-truck that's carrying some sort of nuclear material is going to have a crash on I-70 up by Horizon Drive. Now, this isn't really going to happen. It's just a simulation. But what they will do is it will go out, you know, that this is a drill, this is a drill, this is a drill, but then we will respond to this mock crash, and it will test all of our emergency response systems to it and put all the protocols in place for hospitals and stuff like that to activate it, because, you know, quickly it's going to be discovered that this could be a nuclear event, it might be release, and, you know, all these kinds of things.
They have crisis actors, like pretending to be bodies.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah,
but
you and I can go because our hair's falling out.
Yeah. There will be, but not up there on Horizon Drive. So there would just be this initial test, and then what they're going to have is a physical exercise with a mock location that's pretending to be Horizon Drive in the city, up and on Whitewater Hill at our new training site, because it's just a place that's out of the way and it's less impact to our public. So they will be up there, and they'll have a crash staged and, you know, all this kind of stuff. Certainly the some of the points of the exercise is to initially determine right away, was this an accident or was this an incident? And an incident is something that's different than an accident, like was somebody trying to cause a problem or whatever. And then they'll get into, you know, that determines which way they go with it, how big it gets ramped up. We believe, based on the material that we've seen, that it will be determined to be an accident. But the next thing is there a radiological release and all the stuff that goes along with that. And they're going to really be testing their resources as much as our resources. Our emergency management system here in the county will spin up, and so will the city. City and county government's been briefed on this. And, you know, we will go into the mode of interfacing with them to protect your interests and our citizens' interests and our county's interests, and then also helping them coordinate with local resources like hospitals and faith-based organizations to, you know, volunteer, Red Cross, Salvation Army, those kinds of things. It will bring a significant, and this is the main reason here, is it's going to bring a significant amount of people here, and most of them will be federal people. And so my biggest worry is there's going to be these, most of them are going to be rented cars, they tell us, but who knows what's going to show up. And, you know, somebody sees a marked car and the next thing you know, it gets spun into something that it isn't. And that's really what I want to, you know, your help with, to help everybody know and understand this is what it is. There's nothing more to it, that we are very deeply involved with it to test our own systems and to, you know, test our preparedness. But also to keep an eye on it, you know. And one of the things that they talk about is there'll be a lot of rented vehicles. There will be advanced teams that come in to set up the exercise. There will be people that will come in for the exercise. A lot of people can only come here during the day, and then they have to fly back home to New Mexico at night, because they're gonna bring a ton of people in from the Sandia National Labs and other places in New Mexico, I guess, and they have protocols that they can never be away from that lab more than 8 or 10 hours at a time. They have to have a responsibility there. So they can't come up here and stay for 3 days while they do this. They have to fly in every day. So there's gonna be, my understanding, there's gonna be a Learjet for some of the executives. There'll be a couple of 737s and a DC-9 or something. And, you know, so you'll see those planes coming and going. And I think they look like civilian planes or unmarked civilian planes of some kind. They'll have a helicopter here that will be part of the exercise and will stay here, and we'll probably see it flying around initially, maybe over Horizon Drive, but then it will move out and fly over. And its main purpose is it has radiological sensory equipment in it to see if there's been a release. You know, so they'll have it overhead and all this stuff. There will probably be the Office of Secure Transport are sort of a paramilitary group. A lot of those guys, I've met them before. There are a lot of ex-special forces people, those high-speed people that are there to protect our nukes and our nuclear interest. And so they don't dress with uniforms as much as but they do have weapons and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, during the drill you can see that happen, and I don't think we'll see it up on Horizon Drive, but you know, if it gets filmed by the media or whatever out there at the site, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see that. They've hired us for security for the site, so you'll see deputy sheriffs out there as well.
What is this, where's the site gonna?
It's
be
Whitewater
located?
Hill, where our new training track is.
Oh, okay.
It's just out there past the drag strip. You remember where that is?
Yeah.
So, this kind of goes into some of the things you're going to see, the jets and the aircraft that bring people in every day, and the pickup trucks and box trucks, and they'll have these forklifts and generators, and they're going to set up a command post that's different than the one that's right there at the site over at the fairgrounds, which would be smart, because if you have a release, you don't want all your command people croaking out there or whatever, you know. And then we're going to have our emergency operations center set up here, tests our ability, and I don't know if the city's going to have one set up as well. The hospital, through invitation, other community partners have been invited to run, you know, similar drills or drills that coordinate with this. So you probably see media coverage about the local hospitals doing, you know, their protocols, mass casualty protocols. The mental health hospital will do a taper talk exercise with, you know, walk-ins that people that, you know, could be in some sort of distress or whatever. The volunteer organizations, that VOAD is Volunteer Active Disaster Organizations, Red Cross, Salvation Army, they'll be activated. And then it has this, the dates. The date of the exercise starts on April 1 and it goes for 3 days and it ends on April 3rd.
So is it an April Fool's joke?
Yeah, that's what was our first question as well. So, you know.
Was this something the county had, was asked to do or told to do?
We were invited to participate, but we didn't, they made their determination on their own that they wanted to come here, and we first learned about it, I think, November, and said this is what we're gonna do, and it, you know, we have a DOE facility here, I think is probably one of the reasons why. And they said, you know, your level of involvement is certainly up to you, but we would love to have you participate. It makes sense, you would be participating in the real emergency. It gives us, and I think the thing that we're the most hopeful about it is that it will give us some experience, because one of the things that happens in these things is there's a lot that takes place with the play between local government and state government and federal government. And I think, you know, our emergency manager is deeply involved in this, so he works for us, and so is my other staff. But just this, how we do anytime you have a national incident, whether it's a wildland fire or one of these kinds of things, they bring in these nationally recognized experts in incident management. And you do a delegation of authority to manage the incident. That doesn't mean we turn it over and just close our eyes, though. They manage the incident, and we're plugged in with them, so that we get to make joint decisions with them and take responsibility for it. Actually, we want that as taxpayers, because if we don't, then, you know, can get saddled with a lot of financial problems. So, I mean, this is the real test for us, is it gives us the opportunity to learn how to interface. My colleagues in Boulder County and in Larimer County and in El Paso County have gotten real life experience with this piece, with this whole flood fire issue about how you get involved at a sheriff's level and then the county level and then the state level and then the FEMA level on disaster recovery stuff. And it's a complex process, as you can imagine, with the federal government is sometimes. And so that's the good experience that I think we'll get out of this more than anything else. And, you know, just the play with the hospitals doing mass casualty stuff, fire departments, and the police department and the sheriff's office, so we all will get involved in some way. And, you know, it's a training exercise where we all learn from it, hopefully.
So, let's say it were a real incident.
Mm-hmm.
You, and I understand they've got the expertise, they've got, especially a nuclear event.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna be a great resource. You don't want that.
Right.
But you delegate that authority, because
You
that's
need to
yours to
deputize
delegate.
them, or-
No, that we delegate the authority to the incident management team to manage the
But
incident.
you do that because it is yours to delegate, correct?
The county does it. The county board of commissioners, in conjunction with the Office of Emergency Management, does it. And that office works for me. So we're all involved. When we do that, and we do this on fires every year. We did it in the Debec fire. It's the same process. It's just the scale of the exercise that changes. We delegate it to an incident management group that has expertise in managing a large incident, calling for logistics and planning and operational periods and all that kind of stuff. And but we stay connected with it. Rather than being hands-off, we plug ourselves into their incident command system so that we know what's going on. And the biggest thing that I do on fires, when we have a national fire or a big fire where we get an incident management team, is I stay connected, because the government knows how to spend money on fires, and they would on anything else too. And
They're good at spending money, period.
yeah, and what I do is I protect our county's financial interests as much as anything, because they say, well, you know, there's a cost share on this. It started on private property, which is my responsibility on the wildland fire. And 10% of that land burned and 90% of it's federal. So county, you're responsible for 10% of this cost. Well, if you're on a 2 or 3 or 4 day fire, it's a $2 or $3 or $4 million fire. What I do is say, okay, how can we control our costs? I want to do in-kind services. I've got my guys standing out on roadblocks doing evacuations. We use the county road department with their water tenders and their bulldozers to build fire line, and that's how we mitigate actual dollar costs coming out of our coffers to pay for the fire. And that's the same kind of thing that we do. And then we maintain, you know, like I did in the Debec fire. I delegated only partial authority to them to do the fire management and the management of the resources that were threatened in that, the power line, the river, the railroad, and those kinds of things. And then I kept the interface with the Debec citizens, the evacuation, the communication, the press, and stayed involved in that regard. That I chose to do that. I've seen it done in other counties where they delegate everything to them, but I never do that. So
Is that county board that you're saying? Is that like a full-time county staff that you have for emergency management? You're saying you delegate it to the board, the emergency board?
I'm at the board of county commissioners.
Oh, and then you said you have an
I have
emergency
an
response
emergency.
team.
I have one emergency manager, and that person is responsible for planning and helping community preparedness all the time. And he also has another function in that we have an ordinance here in Mesa County that really organizes our emergency response personnel, EMS people, ambulances and stuff in the county. And there's a oversight of that as well. And so he.
If I can tag along just for a second, one thing I really liked about this exercise that I didn't realize I would was when we were talking initially about the delegation of authority agreement. I was like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't want to do this. And what I did was I talked to a friend of mine who's a commissioner in Weld County, because Stan had brought up that Weld and Boulder had this same situation during the floods. And so I said, hey, how did you handle this? And so she was saying, well, make sure you negotiate your delegation agreement. And the one thing I think this exercise will help us do is to do that in advance. So we do have something that a document that we're ready and comfortable with. Because we don't necessarily wanna give them full authority.
Mhm.
Or we wanna limit it in certain ways, and it would be nice to do it now during a practice exercise than when there's a true flood or some sort of disaster. The other part of this exercise I didn't really realize until we had a big briefing with the feds, I do think you'll realize who these people are because they look like feds. When we walk into this room and it's all federal agents, you're just like, wow. And we're sitting there and we're talking about, our emergency manager did a great job, I cannot say enough great things about him, on bringing up the who pays. And the feds are just looking at us like, what do you mean who pays? Where are your boots on the ground? And this guy was sitting next to me, he's like, I'm your boots on the ground, Rose, what are you worried about? I go, who pays for you? Is it the feds? Is it the state? And this guy from the state made the greatest comment. He said, what you don't understand, because they were just very perplexed by the question. And what he said is, you're talking to people who don't print money in the basement. So we have got to figure out where we're coming up with this money, because county government, if Stan were to say, hey, well, we delegated the authority and now here's a bill for $3 million, I ain't got that money. So we need to be really cognizant as to who the players are, what we're bringing in, and who's going to pay for it. And I think doing it during an exercise is better than during a real life event where people's lives.
So by doing it now, you're setting precedent for how it will be handled in the future for how long?
That's my that's my understanding is at least we would get, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, that we're setting any precedent because we could make a different decision in the future.
Right, I was gonna say, I think
You
a
get
different
experience
event.
working
but
We're
you
just
have to
getting-
go
we're
through the
getting
process.
experience.
Working through the
Yeah.
process.
And that's why I have a lot of our middle managers and first line supervisors involved, is because that's the experience that's gonna remain here for some time. And we want to give them that experience so that they can replicate that experience in a future event if we have one. Now, I've talked to Joe Pelly and John Cook and Justin Smith, and there was a Boulder and Mariner Weld about the flood stuff. And we've learned an enormous amount from them. Joe Pelly, even though he's a Democrat, he's a good sheriff, and he limited the authority in the flood stuff because Boulder kept a lot of the authority, and it was good, what they did.
So if we had an itch, let's say a wildfire event, and you had delegated authority, and then things were going terribly awry, and everything in you said, this is being horribly mismanaged, can you rescind?
I think we
In
can
that
rescind our,
instant,
yeah, we can
that
rescind our
instant,
delegation
no.
authority, right,
Yeah.
right. And more than that is, what I would be doing is I would be saying, this resource that you've brought me is not good, I want other resources here that are good. The nice thing about it is these people are, Bill Honenberg's a Grand Junction guy, born and raised here. He's now a national incident manager. He's not gonna be on this event, but it's an example, these people are, they're top shelf people, they're good. And a lot of times, we have, so they use it about incident management teams, there's type 1 is the top for huge 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have our own type 3 here that involves my staff and Garfield County staff, Newcastle staff. There's all kinds of people that come together to be a type 3 team. And for the longest time, we had a type 3 team managing the DeBeck fire, Pine Ridge fire last year. And then it got into, where it was threatening the national resources of the river, the power lines. There's 2 power lines up there on the hill that we were concerned about, and the railroad. When they have this formula about how much assets get threatened, and it could be people or assets or resources.
And they draw the line at the humpback chub, don't they?
Probably, yeah.
That's it, bring it, little fire.
But then it went to a
The
type.
chubs are swimming
It went
off.
to a type 1, and then we had another fire that was on up the creek up Rome that added to that. It became a complex fire, meaning where you imagine more than one fire.
So the authority delegated is specific to this single training
Yeah,
exercise?
Yeah, and then basically it gets to a point where they say, we don't no longer need this asset, and it goes back down, and it goes all the way back down to me. And so that's what happened in the DeBeck fire, is that we went up to, we started out with local, DeBeck Fire Department and the local BLM engine, and my engines. I have 6 pieces of fire apparatus, a bunch of cops that throw on firefighting gear and go out, and it ramps up to that, and then it goes into a type 3 team, and they start bringing in more resources, was almost all on federal land. And then it went up to the type 1, and then they get to a point where they say, okay, we're done, it goes back to a 3, and it goes back to me, and we're done. And then it goes back to the feds on recovery, you know, they go in and reseed and do all the stuff that they do.
And as long as you guys can retain the authority to rescind that delegation, then, boy, I don't see.
Well, and it's important that we do that, and it's so important that it's important both ways to have that. It's important that we want them to take some responsibility for this too, you know, because I don't have nuclear experts, you know, I mean, in this regard, so, you know, we'd be happy to delegate parts of it to them.
Is this something that's actually transported, I mean, on I-70 on occasion? Is that
No,
why-
they say that they don't use this route to transport any hazardous materials, but they'll use this route to transport equipment that's used sometimes in it. But they don't like to do I-70 because of the Continental Divide and the tunnel, you know. But I bet you anything, 80 and 40 are, and, you know, those kinds of places, so, yeah.
One thing that concerns me about these practice rounds is we know that in 2001 on 9/11 that was a day that there was a practice, the exact routine that the Department of Defense was going through actually occurred that day, and you know, what do you see as, I mean, that's a very, very strange coincidence. I would hope that, I mean, obviously that's insane, but it's what happened.
I don't know about that, but, you know, certainly, we're gonna be watching this like a hawk. You know, I think the good news is that, you know, when we first started talking about it, my first question is this stuff even coming through here at all ever? And they're saying, no, it's not. We have this as a secondary route, and we transport non-hazardous materials through here sometimes. And that gave me comfort, you know, and they did a big briefing for us on what their job is. And, you know, they do in other parts of the country.
So why wouldn't they do this off I-80 where it could go through?
Yeah, right. Why not do it on an
I'm like, if it's
actual
not
route?
coming through here, I mean, we appreciate the experience, don't get me wrong, but isn't there real world experience up the road off I-80 or
Yeah.
something where they could actually feasibly have this
Right.
stuff?
I would hazard a guess that they are not making public whether they use
Yeah.
what highway that they use.
Well,
that's probably
Reality.
true.
That's
But
what I was.
would it be reasonable for you to say, hey, if it is coming through this county, I'd like to be notified?
Yeah, that's what I
Oh,
was
wait,
saying.
wait,
You know,
yeah.
you don't have to ask,
Sure, yeah.
so that,
Whether or not they tell me or not. it'd be-
Right, well, that's exactly it. They're not gonna publicize when they've got a big logo.
but still, if you're on the record saying,
Hazardous,
I wanna know.
especially that.
You know,
hazardous
they talk
because
about
that makes
things
it a target.
that are sort of pretty interesting too about, in an actual event, they're not gonna do that here, but in a national real event, they can declare national security areas and bring in assets and all kinds of things. And certainly that would be something that we would be deeply involved with as well, because a national security area might bring in a lot of security because they're worried about something that, if it was a terrorist event or something, you know, somebody tried to get a hold of material, make a dirty bomb or.
And then that's exactly why they won't tell you when they're shipping
Yeah.
that stuff through.
Right,
because
right.
They don't.
Yeah. So, you know,
Look,
but-
Ahmed, they're shipping the thing through this
Yeah.
Tuesday in Grand Junction.
Yeah.
That's it. You know?
The reason that I believe that they're going to very quickly determine this to be an accident is that I've been talking to the FBI about it, both our local people and then the people in Denver about it, just to gauge their involvement. And they're like, hey, they don't even really want us involved. And they would be deeply planned to be involved if it was going to be an incident. So that's good news. It'll help the scale of it. I think if they wanted to do an incident exercise, it would probably be bigger, you know.
What can we do as a community, networked and coordinated with the sheriff's office, to prepare ourselves in our neighborhoods, our families, and ourselves? How can we
Be a resource.
be a resource, be prepared for this, be coordinated and ready to?
That's a
to
great
assist?
question. You know, as we learn more and more and more about this, you know, they're gonna have all these organizations involved, but I've not heard much involvement about, you know, going out and enlisting help, you know, from the community, so.
We just want our tax money and they'll do the rest.
Yeah.
Just give us your money and we'll take care of it.
This could be an excellent opportunity, though, for a community, coordinated community response, you know, to have, you know, a deputy allotted to various portions of the population, and then have you know, obviously you'd be coordinating and giving the orders, but, you know, if you did have some sort of a plan for the community, I think it would be really, really an awesome time to.
You mentioned early on community partners, would that not be churches and places like that, would that not be the logical place where they would have some role in, you know, say,
supporting people,
or would you
in this
be
event it would
willing
be,
to let your facility be used and so on?
Exactly, and you know, you could predict in this event if they had you know, a nuclear release, there would be mass evacuations and there would be need to house people, and we would be
There'd
going
have to
to
be shelter.
we'd be going to churches, faith-based organizations, schools, anybody with large places that were outside the perimeter zone that were safe, and you know, we'd be mobilizing.
Somebody would be identifying.
You know, I'll tell you, Joe Pelly is the sheriff of Boulder County. He told this story, and I think this is the power of a sheriff, about what happened in the flood. He said that, you know, essentially half of they couldn't get to half of their county, and the half that they couldn't get to was underwater. And he called the Red Cross, and the Red Cross said that this was the first time they've said this to anybody. They said, we have nothing. Because they were already deployed in the other half of the county, and in Larimer County and Weld County, and you know, and they've been still down on fire recovery stuff. They had nothing. And Joe called his church, and he said, I need a place for 3,000 people. I need it 5 minutes from now. I don't know how you're going to do it. And I guess the church just said, we got it. And they took the whole town of Netherland and put them in the church, you know. And he said it was just unbelievable. He told some really fantastic stories.
No bureaucracy.
Yeah. You know, so those are great times. But to get to your question, you know.
Bible Chapel, here we go.
Yeah, we don't, you know, I don't have those plans. It's complex enough with the resources that we got. Could we make it better? We probably could, but we're gonna make the best out of what it is.
That's
that
one
we got.
thing that would be considered as a result of your reviewing this process
Mhm.
afterwards.
And I think, you know, this type of incident isn't one that really the community plays a role in, but I wonder, you know, if we look at natural disaster circumstances, if the sheriff's department ought to have kind of have tallied up, here are my resources, here are my citizen community resources that I'm confident I can draw on.
Here's the church that houses 3,000
Yeah.
people if I need it.
Well, you know, we
I don't know
we
if
actually
we
have
have
some,
that inventory,
we
you
do,
know.
that's part of what the emergency manager's job is to certainly keep track of all the places in the county that can hold people, the different groups that can be called, and then help manage people that might be called up, where I just say, hey, everybody, I need you and your warm body down here for help, and those kinds of things. So
I would much rather respond to a sheriff's request for help than the feds dictate about where to go and how to act.
Sure.
Well, in this type of disaster, the main word would be panic.
Yeah.
Nuclear truck
Yeah.
took over the
Well,
horizon.
if some bad rumors go around
Right.
the community, then that
doesn't help.
that could be an auxiliary problem that somebody needs to
Sure.
anticipate.
Nuclear is terrifying.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
would terrify people. There would be a mass panic. I mean, I think the biggest worry I've had through this whole Ukrainian thing is the fact that Russia has nuclear weapons, and Vladimir Putin, I have no doubt that he would try it. So, the guy's nuts.
Talk about different organizations that would help out. I think you've talked to Paul Levy about the Civitarians at some point. I know he talked to some people, but it's another group that's actually starting up that's planning to help in emergency
Good.
response. That is the purpose of the group, is to help the sheriff in
What's the
natural
name of the
disasters.
group?
Civitarians.
Mesa County Cemetery.
Oh,
Civitarians in Mesa County.
okay,
That's a new word. And
yeah.
Paul Levy is one of the top guys, and I've been meeting with him. Haven't made it the last couple of weeks, but they're meeting every 2 weeks down at the VFW down on U-15.
Well, my staff, emergency manager, and a lot of my middle management people have been involved in this and remain involved and will be deeply involved. Rose and I, from at government levels, are deeply involved in it. Sam is involved in it with the city and his colleagues as well. Chief Camper, Colorado State Patrol. All of us at some point will have pieces in this and working together. And, it includes communication, plans and all that kind of stuff on how to deal with it. So the good side of this is that I really do think it's great for us to be able to test these capabilities and understand what those quirks are during a real event. The downside, if there is any, is we have our town full of feds here
And they might.
I guess the question I would have is, and there's having this off of the pass, we've got a public lands meeting that we're facilitating next week for Brandon on the 27th. I could make an announcement and say, hey, starting next Tuesday through Thursday, there is an actual government exercise being happening here. Don't get excited if you see a bunch of green trucks or white trucks running around.
That's what I'm hoping you'll do.
Email
Yeah, we do an email blast as well.
Can we get this paperwork emailed to us or something?
I'll check
similar
into that.
or
I'm sure we
something
probably
like
have it
that?
electronically. Andy probably has it. I don't have it, but.
Because we'd be more than happy to.
Yeah.
shoot it.
That's what I'm hoping you'll do is that, what I'm hoping is
We can
that
spread the word.
you walk out of here and you believe me that this is exactly what it is. There's nothing more to it. I'm hoping that you'll help me communicate that. Now, it's being communicated through the media already, several
Right.
different ways anyway. We've already started to see some of the comments that come up, when people, what that's gonna mean and, all that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to avoid that, because to be truthful with you, I don't wanna have to deal with pictures 6 months from now about what happened and, that there's
Right.
something going on that really isn't going on, so.
Well, there's always gonna be a few that try to make it into something
Yeah.
that it's not.
Absolutely.
Harry, could you pass that down? That has my email on it.
Okay.
I think the only thing that you said today that
My email's clear at the
kinda
bottom.
concerns me as far as being involved in the community is the fact that they came in and told you guys that they were
Right.
doing this.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with the project, and I think it's good for local law enforcement and,
It's great for us.
and emergency responders. But it should be something that's presented to our community leaders and then
In a request
accepted.
form.
Right.
Yeah, other than that, I don't hear anything.
You want the feds to have respect for that
Oh,
county
yeah.
government?
Well,
Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking
RESPCT.
for? Just
Yeah. Oh, wait, how does the mama spell it?
that's
You
the
go about
that's the new
talking to them
Common
about
Core
that and say,
spelling.
hey, we do have
Respect.
jurisdiction here, and next time you guys would like to run an
Not just
operation,
respect, but I mean, the more
we
money we
wanna
take
cooperate,
from
we
that,
wanna be
the
your
more
partners, but on
power
the
we
other
give them,
hand,
the more people
we
we
do
own
have
that
jurisdiction,
money,
and you
the
don't
harder
tell
it
us
is to
what you're gonna
execute
do, you
ourselves
ask.
and become
And I-
self-sufficient and make our own decisions. Or it's like, well, we can't do that because we need the money for the road, from the fence, because we're so tight with them.
Well, and I agree with Brandon, it should be, and that's where we've lost sight of it, it should be local, state, Fed, not Fed coming and say, we're
Yeah,
doing
right.
this.
Yeah.
And you guys also
And, you know,
have to do this.
I wanna be careful how I represent that, because
Right.
it was, I don't think they asked us permission to come, but I don't think it was a march in here and say, by God, this is what we're gonna do. It was a pretty soft, hey, this is what we wanna do, are you interested in it? We're interested in training and testing our capabilities, it's what professionals do, so it wasn't ever no, you know, kind of.
Well, I think in this day and age, there should be an official acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that way
Makes
if
sense.
something goes on, did you accept it, or did you accept this
Right.
happening? I mean, there has to be a level of responsibility that.
Right, when
Yeah,
all
there
of us
should be a-
disappear off the face of the planet, Rose.
Yeah, including me.
There should be a chain of
I'm at the top of
authorization.
Whitewater Hill, on the second,
Wow.
you don't see me anymore, cause I'm like, this is an RS 2477 route.
Now, you did warn them about the endangered cactus on Whitewater Hill, right?
Oh, yeah, we
And
did.
and you have one on site up there, you should have some special fencing around it for this
Yeah.
event.
We have several, but they're all on the canyon wall, you know, the steep part.
Oh, no, Mr.
I
Lacy
was
he
wondering-
showed me that place a while ago.
Oh, really?
And, there's one there by the racetrack.
Right by the racetrack.
And they made sure not to run it over, which is nice, but
That's
I
not-
don't know, you might wanna get that out of
No,
there.
that's not the hookless cactus
Oh, it's
though,
not.
that's a red herring. Yeah, yeah, the ones that are protected, they're about this big. It's crazy.
So during this incident, I'm assuming that the model airplane site will be off limits?
You know, that's a great question. I don't know that we've nailed that down.
No, we still have
Because
some
we
things
were
that-
advocating that, you know, if the guys are up there shooting trap or flying their model airplanes, we're not ready to stop them, you know, so. And, you know, it brings up all these interesting things. What if, you know, what if the model airplane guys out there have a little helicopter with a camera or whatever, you know, so. Yeah. Well, the news now, the KREX has one, I've heard, so, yeah.
Could I ask a question related to emergency, but not this exact thing? Is there a plan of preparedness in case schools get invaded or there's a disaster in a school?
We
And-
drill on that a
and,
lot.
Yeah, you drill on that a lot, and like in the case of Palisade where I am with the local sheriff, the local chief of police and OMB involved in that, and they would know how to,
We're
drilled.
all in that together.
okay.
We train together.
Okay.
We train everybody we can find. You know that we were training DOW officers in the event they're driving by some of those things. You know, an active shooter and those kind of things.
Palisade PD specifically trained with the sheriff's office and the police department last year on
Okay.
exactly that drill
With
related
the
to
new
schools.
chief, Erickson?
Yep,
Okay.
their officers participated
Okay.
in that. In a simulated drill, which included simunitions and an active shooter type situation.
Yeah, okay.
At one of the local churches, so they are engaged in that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I wanted to get you out of here so you didn't have to mix too much of your supper. So, you know what, guys, I really appreciate everybody showing up and whatever you can do to help us, just.
Well, thank you for having the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Can
doing
I
that.
make just a quick statement in support of you, because these guys haven't been part of the meetings that I've been where I've watched you in action regarding with the feds. I'd like to make a comment.
Okay.
Just because the sheriff's a humble guy, and you just need to know that since November when they stopped by to see us, that he made it very clear that this is a community where, we do, respect and like our environment, and that we are very focused on doing the right thing by the community and the county, and we have great partnerships here already, that we have a great partnership with some of our federal agencies here, but that this is something that he knew and we knew would likely cause some concern, and they made sure that they knew that. So we have been talking to them since November about the impact it's likely to have on this community, and how we wanted to make sure that, he said, complete transparency to our citizens on what's going on up on Whitewater Hill, including even recently, part of the scenarios and some of the discussion on what this scenario looks like and what the actual amount will be and require. Sheriff mentioned that we would have officers up there posted, for security reasons, but that he, wants to make sure that they understand that our citizens, there's the ways we will engage our citizens, the ways we won't engage our citizens. And so he's made that very clear to them, and they have been very respectful.
Well, they
and
have. I
understand
think
that.
though that they do see us maybe a little different in that they don't understand why we're communicating with you or the media as much as other communities. I mean, other communities don't do it as much as we're trying to do it. And I get the impression, I don't know if you do, that they're kind of like, really, why are you taking the time to do that?
Why are you telling the little
Have they
people?
never taken leadership classes?
Yeah, I guess not.
But they have responded very well,
Yeah.
to the
And
communications.
I had a meeting just with the chief of police and my key staff and his key staff about 3 weeks ago, and it was just a touch base, just to say, look, is this thing getting out of control? Are we losing control of it in any way? What concerns do we have? Because it was the day before a big meeting with them again, and I just wanted us to circle our wagons just to test what we were all feeling and hearing before we went to our big meeting. And you know, everybody said the same thing. We're making sure that it doesn't get out of hand. So,
We're good,
I'm-
appreciate you guys.
yeah.
Definitely,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you all for
I wanna
coming.
say, like,
I'll get these
thank you,
emails.
like, I'll put out like a post and an email and stuff, but I'd like to get, like, 'cause we have, you know, a bunch of people who just mistrust the feds, period.
Right.
So
And they
it's
probably
like-
mistrust us too, you know?
But it's like, I'd like to put it back to them and be like, look, you know, you're doing your best, and if they wanna be more involved, what they should do is contact your office, and you can give me a contact and say, how can I help? How can I get more involved in interacting?
Well-
It's not just up to you to be like, here, come help me, it's up to them to reach out and say, I wanna be more involved.
I'd say be careful about that because we don't have the capacity to take a bunch of.
Hey, Brandon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe they could contact Andy